So if we look at the responsibilities of journey orchestration, 4 primary responsibilities. The first one is to remove friction. There's nothing more important for a brand to allow a consumer and a customer to be able to achieve their intended income with as little friction as possible.
Welcome to the ECXO sessions. Welcome everyone. Today we invited a very special guest, Ray Gerber, one of the leading forces in journey orchestration around the globe, with one of the companies that is leading, based in a report from Forrester, is leading journey orchestration from the top. And recently, they was also acquired by Medallia. So I think they are doing the right thing. The ECXO is a organization that aims to educate the corporate in Europe in terms of customer experience, experience design, employee experience, and all related areas of customer experience. That's what we're aiming to achieve in a few years from now. We are just starting. So welcome everyone. Let me introduce our panelists. First of all, CX consultant from Norway, Joanna Carr. She is also our ambassador and founding member of the ECXO with many other people. I am Ricardo. I am the managing director of a small practice that calls eGlobalis and also the founding member of ECXO. And our main guest today is the Chief of Product Officer from Thunderhead. Let me read his introduction to that, it would be bad. But I think, Joanna, you have something to say before I go, yes, how we are going to manage the questions.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you, Ricardo. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the tea sessions today. Ray has got a fantastic presentation prepared for us today, and I'm sure that you are all going to have lots of questions that you want to ask during the presentation. I will be looking over all the questions, and at the end of the presentation, I will present some of the questions that have been asked during the presentation. And I just wanted to say that if we miss a question or that I don't manage to ask you ask your question and get your question answered, then I will be taking note of all the questions and we will get them answered and present them on the ECXO at the end, or probably from the next couple of days. Thank you, Ricardo.
Thank you, Joanna. Let me introduce you now Ray, our superstar today. Ray is a global leader in customer engagement technologies with over 30 years of experience in building innovative technologies for enterprises. He has extensive experience in customer relationship, customer decisions, and self-learning. He also worked in business process management, customer journey management, and ERPs, enterprise resource planning. Before Thunderhead, he was the VP of customer experience at Pegasystems, and also the Chief of Technology Officer in Quadient Software. Today, he is the Chief of Product Officer in Thunderhead, and he's going to lead his presentation. So without further ado, Ray, the stage is yours. I will take this presentation, and all is yours now.
Thank you, Ricardo and Joanna. And I would also invite you to email me directly at rgerber@thunderhead.com.
We'll share that later here.
If there's any questions afterwards. So let me share my presentation and put it in presentation mode. Can I just verify that you're seeing the right screen, Ricardo?
Yes, I think I'm seeing the right screen.
Okay, thanks again for everybody who's joining. It's very exciting for me to kind of do a follow-up from the initial conversation that Dr. Graham Hill had around the basics of journey orchestration, and thought we'll dive into kind of the next level, and also exciting to work with Ricardo on a future session that even goes even deeper, based on the concept of autonomous orchestration. But today we'll look at more the concept of journey orchestration in practice. And when we look at the topics that I'm going to cover today, it is quickly just what is journey orchestration. I think we've heard that many times. Don't spend too much time on it. Spend some time on why journey orchestration, and most of the time we will spend on the core components of journey orchestration, and then kind of do a wrap up with the value of journey orchestration. How does it fit in the organization? What does it allow? And then talk about how best to deploy and think about the business structural changes that is required to get journey orchestration deployed and to truly become a customer-centric enterprise. Okay, so let's just start with what is journey orchestration. I think obviously we all understand what journeys are. I just want to reiterate that journey orchestration is the specific progress, customer journeys is the specific progress of customers and visitors across touch points towards an expected and intended outcome. And for us, it's always important to understand that that customer journey should be owned and managed by the customer. So we talk about the concept of customer managed journeys, not managed customer journeys. And it's based on that philosophy that journey orchestration becomes so key, because journey orchestration is the foundation that allows brands to see the world as customer do, and therefore it is structured as unified technology that learns, understands, and orchestrates journey-based customer conversations across all interactions in organization silos. You don't see references to offers. You don't see offers to next best actions. The focus here is on ensuring the understanding of which conversations are relevant to the customer based on their intent, their wants and their needs, and to be able to allow the brand to insert themselves at the appropriate time into the journey, while also ensuring a proper value exchange where the brand gets value, but the consumer gets value. So if we look at the responsibilities of journey orchestration, 4 primary responsibilities. The first one is to remove friction. There's nothing more important for a brand to allow a consumer and a customer to be able to achieve their intended income with as little friction as possible. Then to individualize each journey based on preferences and intent. And you'll see our focus tremendously on the concept of intent, because it's only if you understand intent and you understand the moments that matter along the journey that lead to the achievement of a specific outcome, or as we call it, jobs to be done, that the brand can truly individualize, not based on segments, but based on individual insights of a consumer, and make this journey specific to themselves. Then arbitrate between multiple journeys based on context. Journey orchestration is very focused on not just progressing a specific journey, but understanding the customer behavioral change and how the customer insights might cause a brand to pause the sales journey when a customer service journey is started, and then when the service journey is completed, to possibly get into a nurture journey. And then once the customer state, emotion, and sentiment is back in the proper place, is to be able to then continue that sales journey, if that is still relevant, based on the behavioral insights that you gathered during the service and the nurture journey. And then finally, to pave the way to journeys in line with customer expectations. We need to make sure that as we progress, what are the customer expectations? And I like to use the Bain model, the B2C Bain model, around kind of the similar to the Maslow hierarchy, where we look at the evolution of expectations, basic expectations to advanced expectations. And it is when you can deliver those 4 that you can truly get into a continuous journey ecosystem where there's not really one end to the journey, but your relationship with the customer is to continue evolving and getting deeper and wider and deeper and wider. However, it is as important to understand what it's not as to what it is. And this is a slide that I'm not going to go into depth because we'll make the slides available in PDF afterwards. But it's the key for you to understand the role and the place of journey orchestration within the brand alongside the role of cross-channel campaign management and the role of personalization, i.e. A/B testing and multivariate testing. I'm not saying journey orchestration replaces those two. I think there is a good mechanism for journey orchestration to play a role in the context of personalizations and in the context of cross-channel campaigns and making them better, but all focused on the customer as the focus, rather the campaign or the product being sold as the focus, and rather than just on the content as the focus. So you'll also see that journey orchestration deriving from traditional next best action capabilities is focused on targeting and working at the individual level versus at segment levels. Okay, so please feel free to review this afterwards as you progress through the deck when this is made available for your review. Now let's get into some deeper areas in terms of what is a journey orchestration platform. So we talk about journey orchestration, but journey orchestration is actually a lot more than that. We just don't like to say all the other words. But in the context of this presentation, I'm going to say journey orchestration really should be described as journey-based, intent-driven conversation orchestration. The key is for you to be able to then also have this as a closed loop, whereas you converse with customers, you continue to get feedback via how they respond to individuals' experiences, but you also have to bring in the voice of the customer as a continual input into improving experiences and learn and experiment in a closed loop mechanism to continually understand what works, what doesn't work, how do you make experiences better for a customer. And then if you look at what are the elements of journey analysis, you can't just look at the behaviors. You can't just take the voice of the customer. It is key for you as a brand to have a holistic understanding of the insights that you have about your customer coming from transactional systems, where traditionally you have private data around their age, their demographics, their psychographics. Adding to that, what is the current journeys that the customer is on? How far have they progressed in a sales journey? How far are they in a retention journey simultaneously? And how do we arbitrate between those two journeys that are running simultaneously? The behavior context, what does this tell us about the customer? What are their preferences that we can derive from that? What channels do they use? Where do they transition from one channel to the other? How quickly do they purchase? What are the moments that matter for them as they continue along the journey? And last but not least, the key aspects of understanding the voice of the customer and deriving the sentiment and emotion that is key for you to understand the desires, the wants, and the needs of the customer that get translated into intent that will drive conversations. But the key for those conversations is to be channel agnostic, but channel aware. I want to make sure that I can have the same conversation with that customer across all channels and not be driven by the channel context and have conversation A in channel 1 and conversation B in channel 2, and therefore could be providing the consumer with contradicting experiences. We also need to make sure that we can automate decisioning as much as possible. We need to automate through the orchestration engine out human interventions into the journey to allow for a seamless experience of the customer that provides a frictionless outcome for them achieving their desires, their wants, and their needs. And then finally, we need to ensure continuity. A customer relationship does not change when onboarding stops. customer relationships need to continue and expand as the customer utilizes the technologies and the products they bought from the brand. I wrote an article that's on the ThunderEd website around customer experience. And one of the key things I focus on is brands are not spending enough time to understand how customers are using the product. They believe experiences are focused on the purchasing cycle, where I believe that the one is not more important than the other. You really need to understand at the end of the day if the consumer has achieved the job they wanted to have done with the products that you've learned, and that will help you better understand your customers, but also help allow you to shape your products to a point where it is achieving the outcomes that the customers expected. If we look at the essential elements of a journey orchestration platform, the key thing is for you as a brand, if you start in the top right, to be able to listen to where the customers engage with you as a brand in real time, all the time. Missing one touch point that is not part of the overall insight about your customer can deter you from having critical information to ensuring that you have a proper understanding of the customer intent. Then the next thing is to, as you then have this ability to get customer interaction understanding across all channels, is also the need to recognize and connect them immediately. It does not help you to bring data from the web and from the mobile, and 3 hours later, you realize that it's the same person that had the same experiences. You have to find ways, as customers engage across different channels, to be able to recognize that they are actually a specific customer or they are a visitor, and how can I connect them immediately so the historical interactions can be part of the same journey view. And then as these customers interact across channels, how can I take every interaction I have? How can I take transactional information, i.e. a purchase, and translate that into interactions? But each of those interactions are associated journey context, so I can understand, is this customer on a new journey? Are they progressing in a current journey? Are they regressing in a current journey? Are they dropping out of a current journey? And once you have all of those interactions and access to transactional insights, can you analyze behavior and then discover intent? I cannot estimate, you should not underestimate the value of analysis in a specific journey analysis. Analytics by itself is not sufficient. You have to bring in the business users and the appropriate scientists where needed to be able to analyze journeys to ensure you have a continuous and proper understanding of customer intent. Once you understand why the customer is engaging with you, what are they trying to achieve, you have to utilize all of those to determine relevant and appropriate conversations in the context of the journeys that they're on or the journeys that you want to help them to get on. And once you have selected that conversation, do you need to understand the current interaction context and generate and orchestrate that individualized content that can be made available to the consumer in a single channel or simultaneously. I might take a banking customer that is interested in an investment product, and I might provide them more information in the web interaction as to the value of that new investment product. But I also might want to forward a lead to the investment manager about a current customer that has showed interest. But I also want to share to a customer via email some additional information around terms and conditions of the new product. And that provides for a holistic and omnichannel experience that allows the brand to get value, but also allows the consumer and the customer to get value. And then last but not least is to be able to get the response from the customer to that individualized content, associate that and bring the voice of the customer into it, be able to associate consumer behavior to voice of the customer responses, and then to learn, experiment, continue to improve, and hopefully do that in an active mechanism where you use machine learning and artificial intelligence to continue to tell you what's working and to make recommendations as to where things need to change. If we look at all of those capabilities, we dive down into three of the key areas: journey analysis, intent discovery, and journey-based orchestration. Before you can do journey analysis, you have to understand the journey context. And you have to have some mechanism within your organization to describe what the journeys are on that you're making available to customers. Then you need to be able to say, once I've defined a journey, what is the context of that journey? What are the goals we're trying to achieve? Okay, how are we going to create orchestration plans? What is the touch point map that we make available to provide detailed context? Okay, what is the metrics we're trying to gather? What are the value expectations that's associated to each step of the journey? And then we, for example, can go in and saying, how do we then associate a touch point map or expectation map to this journey to provide us a detailed understanding in terms of what are the journey phases, what are the customer expectations along the journey, what channels do we want to make available for each of those lifecycle stages. But also key is how would you start thinking about what is the customer responses that we would need if we understand opportunities to improve the customer's experiences. And only then can we go and say, now we have a journey context. So as we listen across all channels and we gather information associated to journeys, do we want to analyze journeys in the context of dimensions? How are customers behaving to get completions? Where do they start? Where do they end? Where do drop-offs occur? What friction happens along the way? When do they prefer transition to an assistance to help them complete their journeys? Where do they continue to have to go back in their journeys to saying, I didn't have enough information to approve the terms and conditions. I need to go back to a journey step in the awareness stage or in the knowledge stage. Where does dormancy happen? Okay, how many times do customers stop and start at the same place? But you have to be able to do journey analysis in the context of the 4 analytics types. You have to understand descriptively what happened across the journeys. Then you need to do detailed diagnostics. And then you can start already using machine learning to be able to give detailed understanding in terms of why things happened, but also then what is going to happen, and then what we do about it. And we should do all of that in the context of customer journeys. And if we look at just an example of friction analysis, this is an example of a journey analytics screen. I can see here, I have customer channels, I have touch points, I have stages, and I have what we call activity types. But I can also now see how people are progressing from left to right. But I can also go and click on friction analysis. And now we can see here that highlights for you the areas in the journey where friction occurs, and that's where analysis starts. If we then move on to the next topic, which is intent discovery, understanding intent is essentially a question of understanding why a person is motivated to act in a particular way at a particular time, and how your brand can be part of it. Okay, so that allows you, and when we talk about a particular time, are there moments that matter along the journey? Are there decision points that when customers get to those decision points, they want the brand to engage with them, to allow them to progress in the journey, still in their own way, but with the help and aid of the customer. If we look at the value of data that the brand has to provide engaging experiences, traditionally we start with demographic, then we move on to psychographics, and then there's a lot of talk about behavior. But the most valuable is if you can translate all three of those into cohorts to be able to understand customer intent and use that customer intent in a real-time manner to improve customer experiences along the way. If we look then saying, but how do I discover intent? There are two key pieces of information that is required to discover intent. The first one is you have to, as a brand, have a relationship between the products and services you provide, or the propositions, and the intent that you believe the customers have. And then be able to identify, how do I correlate those products and services with the intent, and what journeys enable customers to achieve their intent, while brands satisfy that intent via the products and services that they provide to customers. Once you have that hierarchy, then you have to go and say, but what customers have I had historically that have bought products and services, were in journeys, but was associated to a specific intent? So which customers that plan for retirement using our bank and our bank's products have a plan for retirement? And then when we're saying there's 10,000 customers that have done that, we need to understand their demographics, their psychographics. How did they behave historically? How did they respond to surveys? What was the sentiment and emotion we detected along the journeys? And once we have the hierarchy and the customer insights, then we can go and say, now, how do we correlate the intent with the behaviors? And you can most probably only do that with machine learning capabilities and artificial intelligence capabilities. And once you've created machine learning models that can act in real time and learn in real time, then you can actually use those machine learning models and the correlation of behaviors to intent to take a current customer that engages in a specific channel, using their behavior up to the point, their demographic, their psychographics, what you know about the voice of the customer, and you can go and translate that and determine probabilities for them as to which is the most relevant intent for them. And that in the propensities need to be utilized in the journey orchestration engine to appropriately rank the conversations associated to the areas of interest of that specific customer or consumer. If we then get into the orchestration engine, the question is, if we have significant insights of our customer, behaviors, insights, and we want to optimize inbound and outbound experiences with individualized content, what should the orchestration engine be able to do for us as a pseudo black box to be able to do this at scale? But before we can actually do that, there are a couple of things that the orchestration engine needs to have before it can do its job appropriately and before it can get into an autonomous decisioning space. So the first thing is the orchestration in itself need to be aware of the journeys, of the conversations that brand make available along the journeys, but also even deeper to saying, what are the customer expectations that I've associated to the journeys, and what are the goals and strategies that I need to associate to every journey? Also importantly, you need to understand what are the resources available within the company to help orchestrate a journey. So the first one, for example, is what is my budget for promotions? So how far have I reached into achieving a specific outcome for a promotion? Secondly is what employee resources are available if an orchestration wants to transfer a customer to a chatbot or into a voice conversation. Then we also need to, the orchestration engine needs to understand what is the customer's real-time interaction context. What is the channel that they're on? What was the behaviors that they've had 2 seconds ago? Are they possibly having simultaneous engaging experiences where they're on the call with the customer service agent while they are researching for products on the web? And then you have sufficient information to be able to then take the journeys and the conversations that you want to make available via orchestration plans that provide the context of when those conversations are available, the content associated to each of those orchestrations in the context of that specific orchestration plan, the objectives that you're trying to achieve, how many do I want to sell, in what period of time, while delivering a specific feedback from customers. I also need to have within my orchestration platform, I call it an active learning capabilities that allow brands to continually experiment and learn on the fly. It doesn't help you to build models and every 24 hours or 48 hours do predictions and make that available, because customers' behavior changes behavior all the time. And when you made a prediction about a customer last night, that now could have significantly changed because of the behaviors that he had, which is driven by his personal circumstances. Once we have orchestration plans in place, we have an active learning capability that can build and generate customer predictions in real time. Can we get to a point where, how can we filter out customers, journeys, and conversations? And it's important that you do that in a funnel-like manner, because you want to be able to apply rules. For example, at the customer level, I cannot send more than 5 emails to a customer per week, regardless of what the conversation context is, and regardless of what the journeys are. You need to be able to eliminate at the customer level to ensure your platform to perform and scale, and then identify those relevant journeys based on corporate policies and guidelines. But you can also importantly use predictions to be able to say, I'm not going to engage a customer in a journey when their probability of completion is less than 25%, for example. Once you have filtered out journeys and you have the relevant conversations identified that will progress the customer along those journeys, you have to get into a scoring engine capability where you can score based on the value of the conversation to the brand and to the customer. And for the brand, it is, what are the goals that we've set out? We can see how COVID has changed our goals. Are we focused on sales? Are we focused on keeping customers? And what are the priorities? And how can I translate all of the elements I have into what we call an arbitration rule to be able to provide a scoring to each of the relevant conversations? And then I'm going to rank those and choose the top 1 or the top 2 conversations that are delivered to the consumer via individualized content that is generated based on understanding the customer context, and possibly CMS that provide content available to be translated into individual experiences that are delivered inbound and outbound simultaneously. If we then get into how do we deploy journeys, when we look at the ability to get for a brand to one-to-one engagement, the first thing you need to be able to do is onboard the customer. And what we do many times is we configure listeners. We understand the problem that the customer is the brand is trying to solve, and add listeners to the touch points and sit there for 6 weeks and do nothing while you're trying to get interaction data about customers to get a better understanding of their behaviors and what it's telling you. Then the best is to be able to take a couple of use cases, and you can determine, do I want to go across many channels for a specific journey, but focused on maybe the awareness stage, because I have problem getting people from awareness to the knowledge stage or to the consideration stage? Or do I go in and say, I'm focusing on 1 or 2 channels, but go all the way from the awareness stage to the use stage? Then you need to continually analyze journey behavior and make sure that the insights derived continue to adapt the profile and the knowledge and the insights you have about that customer. And then you can go and expand, add multiple journeys, get deeper into the journey itself, expand across additional channels. And you do all of that in an iterative loop. And as you continue to iterate, can you truly get to the point where you can optimize and have holistic and fully adaptive single orchestration brain across the brand, which also leads to the journey orchestration engine becoming the center of the customer ecosystem. And once you get to that point, you continually optimize, can you truly get to one-to-one engagement? Then another key aspect is for you to understand that journey orchestration doesn't require your organization to change their structure. Okay? There are specific departments and divisions because of the personality types that works in those departments, the skills and knowledge they need. But when you get to deploying a customer-centric solution like journey orchestration platform, you need to be focused on understanding what are the journeys that we're trying to improve, and how can we create journey-based teams where I have a manager in essence per journey, but that manager has assigned to them people from different functions to help them work as a holistic team in terms of how do we improve our retention journey across the organization, holistic as a whole. It's only when you do that that you can continue to put the customer in the center of your organization. And it's important to understand that getting results from journey orchestration is not a 2-year project. It's not a 5-year project. It's not requiring 25 people to participate. You can pick and choose your use cases, your channels, and your journeys. And here is just an example of some of the Thunder8 customers that were able to quickly achieve some outcomes for those specific journeys. If we then look at the value of journey orchestration, and again, just at a very high level, because we're running out of time, the first one is it enables customer obsession. I cannot iterate more. We all understand how Amazon works, how we love Amazon, okay? And when you look at one of the leadership principles of Amazon, it's focused on customer obsession. And we believe that journey orchestration is a key element to doing that, because it can make the customer experience personal every step of the journey across the customer lifecycle, and always put the customer in the focus of everything the brand does, even though it might be in an automated fashion. Then enabling digital transformation. We've seen the impact of COVID and how brands are focusing on digitally transforming themselves. We can see here that the first step in digital transformation is building customer-centric journeys. And that's a key aspect of you to be able to continue to the next steps of digital transformation by automating, enabling, enhancing, and enriching. Then, last but not least, is the ability for you as a brand to start thinking about the customer ecosystem. What are the softwares, solutions, processes, guidelines, policies that I have by looking at the customer as the center of the universe, and how do I utilize journey orchestration as a mechanism to be that single brain that sits and arbitrates between things happening in the loyalty system, in the CRM system, in the content system, and help getting to the point where you can truly, in an automated fashion, be customer-centric and customer-obsessed. Key takeaways. Let's do a review. Understand and orchestrate journeys is the future of a customer-led business. It's important to understand the differences between the tools, as many false claims, journeys, and orchestration, and go back to being able to understand the difference between campaigns, the role that campaigns play versus the role that journeys play, the role of A/B testing versus the role of journey orchestration. The core, making sure that you understand the core elements are journey analytics, intent discovery, and journey-based decisioning. And I cannot, again, underestimate journey analysis and continually analyzing behavior to get deeper insights that is undiscovered is a key aspect. The more time you spend on journey analysis, understanding your customers and translating that intent, the better and more appropriate and relevant conversations you have with your customers along all channels. Deployment doesn't have to be daunting or lengthy. Start small and grow over time. Thinking of it as a very agile process. Think of it as a process that can stop and start based on external conditions that occur. And more importantly, no new skills are needed. The key thing is for you to understand is how can I quickly utilize the knowledge and skills I have, but bring them into a customer-centric thinking and maximize the value of those skills, but focused on the customer as a whole. I thank you all for listening, and please feel free to reach out. And I think, Joanna, we're back to you now to cover some of the questions.
Yes, thank you, Ray. Yes, we've got some questions that have come in. First off, as a question regarding marketing campaigns. So the statement is marketing campaigns, Ray, they're not going away. So how do we integrate interactions and journeys within campaigns? Have you got any tips for us?
Well, the interesting thing is that we're at an OEM relationship with Salesforce for for 18 months. We're very successful in that. And that was really focused on taking the traditional exact target campaigns and bringing journey orchestration into the mix to be able to firstly add a layer of arbitration between campaigns as one. The second one, as customers engage within campaigns, there was a continuous outreach at every step in the campaign to the journey orchestration engine to determine, based on immediate behaviors, if that is still the right thing to do for the customer. Do I want to pause a campaign? Do I want to start a new campaign? Do I want to remove somebody from a specific campaign? So I think, again, that's something we'll cover a little bit more in autonomous orchestration. I think when you look at, traditionally, you have on the left-hand side campaigns which are predetermining based on internal inside-out view of what they think the consumer behavior should be over time on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, you have next best action technologies, which are amazingly smart, but brands sometimes struggle to trust next best actions because they don't really know what might happen next. And I see the journey orchestration as the mechanism that create the connective tissue doing campaigns and next best action technologies to be able to provide a more visual understanding of how customers behave. And it might be that campaigns, as you get to know more about the customer, get reduced to maybe an onboarding process where there is a definitive sequence of actions that need to take over time to properly onboard a customer, and that you bring in next best actions as conversations through the view of journeys, so that you holistically think of what are the conversations I'm having in A/B tests, in next best actions, and in campaigns.
So it has the ability to make it much more, campaigns much more dynamic.
Exactly, yes.
Okay, we've got another question in here from Stefano. In terms of organization structure, you talk about a matrix organization organized in journeys. How is that powered with the customer-centric mindset approach? Sorry, I lost a bit. Yeah, mindset approach. Is that done via the journey manager? Would this belong to a customer experience center of excellence?
Yeah, I think there's two levels. The first one is, as I showed on the diagram, this concept of journey teams. Once you create journey teams across the life cycle of a customer and bring in marketing, sales, service, commerce, loyalty members into a journey team, you are creating a level of customer centricity. Important then for me is that those journey managers need to report into a single, call it a chief customer officer, that can work with the journey managers to ensure cross-journey proliferation of customer centricity. And that is without having to change the organization structure. We have an energy company in Germany that's got 20 million customers, very, very successful in creating journey teams from different departments and rolling that up into, they have a digital transformation person that want to make sure that all digital transformation efforts across the journeys continue to be customer-centric.
Yeah. So it enables much more collaboration. At the same time, there's real importance to keep the governance aspect of the of managing the cross
exactly
all the journeys. Yeah.
Yeah, because remember, you have two dimensions. You still have the functional dimension where you have the CMO as a marketing person running marketing, being able to understand what is happening across the 10 journeys we have within the marketing organization, and you have the journey managers that that represent the journey team from a marketing perspective, all report to the CMO. So you have two dimensions. You have the journey manager looking holistically across. How do we make sure that there's not friction, there's not a drop off from one to the next stage, from marketing into sales, into service, into loyalty, into advocacy. But at the same time, you have this dimension of the marketing officer, the chief revenue officer, that says, okay, but how are we doing as a marketing organization across the 10 journeys please tell me, Mr. Journey members of the marketing organization, how we're progressing. So.
Okay, we've got lots of questions coming in here. Are we still okay for time? Yeah. Okay. Have you seen, Ray, have you seen organizations completely transform their organizational structure outside of just creating journey managers teams with departments?
I've heard companies talk about that. I've not physically seen people changing the organization structure. I personally would say, I'm not sure that's a good idea, okay? Because I think that the knowledge and skills of people within departments are very specialized. You know, you have salespeople that have very specialized skills that are focused on interpersonal relationships. You have marketing people that are very focused on content. And I think therefore, you know, brands hire people within marketing that fits the marketing, you know, personality, as an example, the sales personality, the customer service personality, being empathetic to customers and stuff like that. I think then, you know, and there's also defined guidelines on how do I generate content that is very specific to kind of the marketing team. But then be able to take those and put them in a pseudo different organization structure and journey teams, I think is the best outcome for a brand. Yeah. I'm not saying it wouldn't work for organizations. It's just where I've been involved in. It's interesting when you sit around in a room around a table with a journey team and you see the different personalities. Mm-hmm. You can see immediately that person's in marketing, that person's in sales, etc. So
yeah.
You're right.
There's a reason why people attract their positions or their jobs, so to say. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, another question. How is the journey orchestration platform related to a CDP? How does this communicate to a CRM to drive human follow-up? And would marketing automation not be part of the journey management teams?
Well, I think maybe to start with the last question, marketing automation is definitely part of the CDP, of the journey orchestration team, because automation is a key aspect of journey orchestration. Okay, but the key is that journey orchestration is not isolated to just marketing capabilities. One of the differences between marketing automation and journey orchestration is journey orchestration is focused on the full life cycle of the customer across marketing, sales, service, loyalty, advocacy, and even commerce. Okay, how does CDPs relate to journey orchestration? I think they are a key element. I think in many ways, some journey orchestration platforms have a tremendous overlap with CDPs. However, I think one of the things that CDPs does not have is journey context. So many journey orchestration platforms and implementations where brands have CDPs because they want to have that golden key of the customer. Okay, they bring data in overnight in an historical manner into a CDP from different systems. So they start having, a single insight around the customer, and they create customer-centric insights. But what they then do is they also then push those interactions into the journey orchestration, I would call it orchestration database, because as the data comes in, it adds journey context to every interaction. So it has the ability to then understand not only what interactions occurred, but as I'm bringing them in through APIs or real time into orchestration engine, I'm now adding journey context to it. And that journey context, interesting enough, is also available then as additional customer insights in the CDP, as the CDP is still focused on segments, while the journey orchestration engine is focused on individuals. Being able to bring in transactional data, like linking to CRM systems, the journey orchestration engines generally don't hold privacy data, like date of birth, et cetera. So it's important for a journey orchestration engine to be able to gather in real time, on demand, data from traditional transactional systems and CRM systems, payment systems, to bring that into the orchestration engine to be able to understand patterns of behavior. Is this person continue paying late? Is he paying more? Therefore, we can assume his intent is to pay the vehicle off earlier than what is intended to do, but also to be able to take a date of birth, get to an age component that can be immediately made available to the active learning engine as an attribute or a feature to be able to create a prediction that is used in the orchestration engine.
Okay. Wonderful, thank you. Next question. This is a question about analytics. How important or not is it to understand the culture and taste differences per region or country in order to review an accurate picture of the customer and result in the journey analysis?
I think, I believe the European CX organization, one of the things that drives it is its understanding of diversity, its understanding of cultural differences. And when I spoke to Ricardo the first time, I grew up in South Africa. I made a transition to move America, and then I lived in London. And we all are driven by our upbringing, by the environment we grew up in. And I think it's very important, therefore, that journey orchestration system, a campaign system, an A/B testing, any personalization system has a deep understanding of the consumer and the ecosystem that they live and operate within. Okay? So I think fundamentally that to me is part of customer insights, but that also is important because my insights and my behaviors in one culture can translate into specific desire, want, and need that's different to Johanna's, that maybe had similar behavior, but is associated to a different context because of where she lives, where she grew up.
Okay. And that comes back to the importance that you said earlier, Ray, that it's so important to focus on the insights, keep working with the analyzer.
Yeah, it's just continuous learning. What are you learning about how the environment is changing regionally? How does that impacting the conversation I need to have? And I like to use this word, emerging conversations. How do you start identifying emerging conversation in regions, in countries, and being able to make sure that you have those conversations that's emerging in one region with the people in that region, but might not be applicable to that same conversation in another region.
Okay, we are getting towards the end. We do, however, have a couple more questions if we've still got time for a last couple of questions. Some people need to unfortunately go. So just before we take the last two questions, Ray, you did mention it earlier, but how can people get hold of you after this event?
Yes, my email address is rgerber.
We added in the
Okay.
Q&A or in the chat for everyone.
And please feel free to send me questions.
Yes.
I think it would be good to maybe copy Ricardo, Joanna, so they have a central repository for all questions. I'll make sure to copy everybody we need it, and hopefully we can share the questions and responses on the community portal, so that everybody can get learning, hopefully from the answers I provide. So
Perfect.
Wonderful, thank you. And for anybody who is about to leave us now, just to remind you that it's please do come and join us in our community at the ECXO. It is a free access community, and we've got some more fantastic events lined up. One of those being that you will be returning with us, Ray, and we will be talking about automation. And it's
autonomous
like
orchestration.
Thank you. Autonomous orchestration. Thank you, Ricardo. So please do join us and follow all the events that we've got lined up, and make sure you're ready to sign up for the next event with Ray, because this event has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much. I think we've
and I see, Joanna, there's a couple of questions in the chat that I did not respond. If you can maybe put them together in an email to me, I'll respond and I'll email back that you can share appropriately.
We'll do
I
that.
will do that. Absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ray, for your time. It was a really great presentation. Appreciate very much that you come. Joanna, thanks so much for your time as well. It's not my best today, so I was out.
It's easy to talk about something that you're passionate about, so which is nice. Thank you for allowing me to share with the community, Ricardo.
Thank you so much. Have a great afternoon, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.